All right, here we are, the finish line. This is the last part of our cloud migration series. We've talked strategy, we've talked costs, we've talked operations. But today we're taking on the final boss, the super technical, nitty-gritty hurdles that honestly can make or break your whole project. So let's dive right in.
Okay, and as always, just a quick reminder, this is the final installment of our 5-part explainer. It's all based on some really in-depth research from Virtualization Options LLC. And you know the drill, we're really just scratching the surface of their full report, but we are absolutely hitting the most critical points you've got to know. And I mean, this really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? You can have the most beautiful strategy, the most detailed project plan on the planet, but if your software just doesn't work when you flip that switch, well, then none of it matters. This is where the rubber truly meets the road.
So the first big hurdle we have to jump over is software compatibility. And look, this is not a simple yes or no checkbox. Oh no, this is a deep kind of forensic investigation to figure out if your current software stack can even survive in its new home in the cloud.
And you really have to break this down into layers because it's not just one thing. First, you've got the basics, your operating system. Will that specific version of Linux you're using actually run? What about your runtimes, like your Java version or .NET Framework? Then you dig deeper into middleware, the stuff that connects everything, like WebSphere or JBoss. That might just not be supported. And then, oh boy, then you have databases and third-party licensing. That can open up a whole new can of worms with costs and weird restrictions in the cloud. Seriously, any one of these layers could be a complete showstopper.
So once you do this compatibility check, it basically forces you to answer two huge questions. First, what has to be fixed right now? We're talking about those apps with old code or hard-coded bits that literally won't work without some changes. That's what we call refactoring. But then there's the second, more exciting question. What can we upgrade? This is your golden opportunity to ditch that old, clunky database you manage yourself and swap it out for super efficient managed cloud service. It's this constant balance, right? Fixing the old versus embracing the new.
All right, so let's say you've got a plan for your software. The next massive hurdle is the network. I mean, getting your apps to talk to each other and to talk to your users, it's just a completely different ballgame in the cloud. And trust me, ignoring this part, that is a recipe for absolute disaster. And this really lays out exactly why it's so different. Think about it. On-prem, in your own data center, you're used to super low, super consistent latency. In the cloud, it's all over the place. On-prem, you probably have that classic castle and moat security model. In the cloud, you've got to switch your brain to something totally new, like a zero-trust model. That predictable performance you loved, it's gone. Now you're dealing with all the weirdness of a distributed system. You absolutely cannot just lift and shift your old network ideas. Okay, so this means your planning has to be just meticulous. You have to ask a ton of questions. Are we going to set up a private connection, like an AWS Direct Connect, to get that consistent performance back? Do we even know how sensitive our apps are to latency? What's our plan for security, for DNS, for load balancing, to make sure we're resilient? And a huge one, did we actually calculate how much bandwidth we're going to need for everything from regular traffic to backups? Seriously, each one of these bullet points is practically a whole project on its own. Okay, I get it. Hearing all this about software compatibility and network nightmares, it sounds pretty daunting, right? But the good news is you don't have to do every single thing by hand. And that brings us to the wonderful world of specialized migration tools. So what do these tools actually do? Well, they pretty much have 3 core functions. First, they do discovery. They go out and automatically map out everything you have, your servers, your apps, and crucially, how it's all connected. Second, they handle replication and sync. This is so cool. They copy your systems to the cloud and keep them in sync, which is the secret to minimizing downtime. And finally, they orchestrate the cutover. They automate that super stressful moment when you actually flip the switch. And you've got a ton of options out there. All the big players, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they all have their own set of tools. And honestly, that's usually the best place to start. But there's also a whole world of third-party tools, like Cloud Endure or Zerto, that might offer more advanced features, especially if you're doing something really complex or maybe migrating to multiple clouds at once. So you go out, you pick your tools, and you're all set. Problem solved, right? Well, not so fast. See, just having the tools isn't the magic fix. You have to really master them and, more importantly, understand what they can't do. I mean, this is the question on everyone's mind, isn't it? Is there a magic button?
The idea of a completely automated push-button migration, it's so appealing. But the reality, well, as you've probably guessed, it's a little more complicated than that. And this is the key takeaway. If you remember one thing, remember this. Automation is not autopilot. Think of it like a really powerful co-pilot. It can handle all the repetitive, heavy lifting tasks for you, but it's not flying the plane. You, the human expert, still need to be in the captain's chair, making the critical calls. And here's why that's so important. These tools are not perfect. They'll often miss some subtle dependency that's buried deep in a config file somewhere. They really struggle with old legacy systems or that custom software your company built 15 years ago. They can even create risks with data consistency in your databases. And yeah, despite all the marketing claims about zero downtime, pretty much every migration is going to need some kind of cutover window. The bottom line is, automation doesn't get you out of doing the hard work of manual oversight and, most importantly, tons and tons of testing. So how do you actually use these tools and not get burnt? Okay, here are the best practices. First, do a pilot. Pick something small and non-critical to just learn the ropes. Second, do a real proof of concept on an application that's actually representative of your real stuff. And don't be afraid to mix and match tools. Maybe use one for discovery and another for the actual migration. Oh, and please, for the love of all that is holy, integrate your monitoring tools for visibility. And always, always have a tested rollback plan. Because hope is not a strategy. You know, this quote from the original report just says it all perfectly. A successful migration isn't about finding that one magical tool. It's about building a smart strategy that blends the power of automation with the expertise of your people, along with some unavoidable manual work and just a ton of testing. And that brings us to our final question. And honestly, it might be the most important one. We've talked all about software, networks, tools, all the tech. But in the end, it really just comes down to your people. A successful migration hinges on having a team that doesn't just get the technology, but has the skills, the processes, and the experience to handle it when things inevitably go wrong. So the real question is your team truly ready? Because that's the ultimate key to success.